And welcome back to Who Would Win, the week of Who Would Win. And today's Who Would Win comes to us from Shang Sun, who asked the question, who would in a fight, Sun Wukong or Thor? Specifically, they're beings from mythology itself, not from like Marvel Comics or anything like the mythological figures that they are. This is very reminiscent of the Hercules versus Sun Wukong fight that was on Death Battle, which was actually a pretty good fight. I really actually liked the way they depicted that fight. So this is very tricky because going through, I don't have the time of day always to go through everything about everything when it comes to like mythology or lore or anything like that. But I did already knew certain things within each of their histories. And so I do have at least some pages up here of their mythology to go through and kind of refresh myself on. Sun Wukong, to start out with, was born from a rock. The rock was blown off a hill, and the rock's face turned into this monkey, who, while young, could already stand and talk. He lived with other monkeys for some time before they did a game where they could get to the end of the waterfall and see where the water stream came from. They would be declared the king of monkeys, to which he was. After some time, he would go on to fight other beings, which would allow him to gain his famous traits, such as his chainmail armor, his 8-ton staff, which could grow and shrink, his cape, all that. But he wasn't satisfied with that. He then he became intrigued with the idea of immortality. And so he ultimately gained favor with the Jade Emperor, but became the stable master of his horses, which was the lowest position in heaven. Beyond that, he asked, is there any way I can gain immortality from this? No, there is not. Then I don't want to learn it. And so his quest for immortality began, and he defeated swaths upon swaths of enemies for gaining more and more favor. But it just wasn't enough. The Jade Emperor would basically say, okay, I'll appoint you to this. Nope, I do not agree. I give myself the sage who is equal to heaven. And eventually he had to call in the Buddha, their de facto being, and basically said, do something. It's like, okay, I'm going to put you under a mountain for 500 years. Now, after that, he did ultimately get released, but on the condition that he would released by a monk who basically said, all right, but you're going to have to basically serve under me and learn from me. And he did, and he ultimately gained enlightenment and gained true immortality, as he was able to let go of his greed and anger and all that. Now, as such, the Monkey King is a very unique character. He's one of my more favored mythological figures. Him, Anubis is one I'm very fond of. Quetzalcoatl as a god, I just like the idea. I love snakes in general, so the serpent god is a really cool idea. Characters like that are really cool to me. Sun Wukong, though, is definitely one of my more favorite characters. He is a master warrior and immortal on many levels. It's very difficult to injure him, and if you can injure him, it's even more difficult to actually kill him. He's capable of creating multiple copies of himself with his hair. He is capable of transforming apparently into 72 different animals and objects. He has control over the elements, many different elements. He is a master staff fighter, weapons fighter in general. His staff can morph into God knows how big a form. His strength is deceptive. He is much stronger than you would imagine. He is capable of easily manipulating that pole arm with no difficulty. One of his greatest feats was leaping from one end of the universe to the other, but there wasn't actually a universe so much as it was the Buddha's hand, and that was the test. Buddha says, "All right, just jump from one end to the other, and you win the universe." Sorry, you were on my hand the whole time. But the fact is that was still a huge jump. Like, he was basically kind of jumping the equivalent of a universe to some degree. He is a trickster by nature, though. Even with enlightenment, he's still very difficult to deal with. He's still got a trickster and fun personality to go along with that. So he's a skilled combatant, but he's not infallible. He's been tricked and defeated by more powerful individuals. The question is Thor a more powerful individual? Well, that is depend. Oh, God. Sorry, 1 second. I live in an old house in the woods, and unfortunately, we got an ant problem. And I'm just seeing more and more of them pop up. And my God, just get rid of you. Get rid of. Where the hell did you go? Anyway. So right out the gate, it should be known that Thor is not just the god of thunder. He's associated with thunder, but he's also the god of lightning, storms, sacred groves and trees, strength and the protection of humankind, howling and fertility. So Thor in mythology is actually a individual who has his hands in a lot of honey jars, if you will, or cookie jars. He is a very he's a very widespread individual. Now his true history is there's a lot of interpretation there. But that said, one of the things he's obviously he can summon storms. He can summon thunder, wind. His hammer Mjolnir is always at his side. He is a skilled warrior. He's a man who lived on the battlefield for a lot of his time. But beyond that, a lot of his history, a lot of his feats are a little nebulous. There's only one feat that truly stands up high for Thor, and that's his battle and ultimate defeat of the World Serpent, Jorgmungandr, or Jorgmungandr. I'm sorry, yeah, I think it's more Jorgmungandr. Jorgmungandr. One second here. The Great Serpent, which again is I'm gonna see if they have a pronunciation. Do you have a pronunciation here, Wiki? Let's find out. Jorgmungandr, I believe it is. Anyway, the World Serpent is a beast that is said to literally wrap around the world itself, and that Thor is destined to do battle, defeat, but die at the hands of this beast. That he'll take 9 steps before succumbing to the venom of it. This is a being that is depicted in many different fictions, mythologies. Most mythologies, weirdly enough, depict a large serpent of some kind. Like I just explained earlier, Quetzalcoatl is a feather serpent god of the Aztec and Mayan culture. You have the rainbow serpent on Aboriginal culture. Is it Apophis, which I believe is the serpent that swallows the sun in Egyptian culture? So most cultures have a very large serpent as their as usually as depictions of an antagonist. Though in the rainbow serpent's case, it's more of a giver of life, symbol of rebirth. So Thor was destined to do battle with this massive, giant monster of a serpent. And he did beat it. He beat this world-ending being, but at the cost of his own life. This, I think, tells us a couple things. One, Thor is very powerful to be taking on world-ending threats. But B, I think it plays the hand of who wins the fight. The Monkey King, for all of his faults, never was defeated in his actual fights. He was taken care of through other means, but it was never actually in battle that he was defeated. And the beings he fought were beings from heaven. They were royal guards of heaven. They were, demons, monsters, all that. Thor did ultimately win, but at the cost of his life. At the cost of, the fact that the serpent's venom was so strong that it would kill him. And there is more. I mean, there's evidence beyond that Thor would, in theory, would lose the fight to son Wukong. The way the mythologies work in both Norse and Buddhism, Chinese mythology, differ a little bit in terms of how they deal with the spiritual natures of things, realms, dimensions. Norse seems to actually ground itself a bit more in the world, while and I mean that physically, for instance, Olympus, if we're going to go, which they do talk about the Roman origins of post-Roman era of Thor. So he's the idea of him has actually existed around since then. So things like Mount Olympus exist on Earth. It exists on Earth. It's not a different reality set between, it's not a different dimension, higher plane of existence. No, it's just, a place where the gods lived. Norse is a little bit more towards the different realms, but at the same time, that it is a little it's more closer to the Greek than say the Buddha realities Buddhism is. The reason for this is that Sun Wukong actually truly is immortal. Like, he can't die by a conventional means. You can't stab him and just kill him. Whereas Thor actually can die that way. And that, I think, is the big difference between them. Pretty much anything that's Thor, and this is another problem too, is that anything Thor can do, technically speaking, Sun Wukong can also do that. If we're talking about, like, say, abilities, one second here, origin, Chinese, yeah, each of his hairs have transformation powers. He can magically manipulate wind, water, fire as well, which basically means he can summon storms if he really wanted to, which is exactly what Thor does. The only real difference would be in their weapons. Now, if we were looking at the Marvel versions of these characters, like the comic versions of these characters, then I'd probably lean a lot more towards Thor. But the fact is, that's not the case here. Sun Wukong is also just a more skilled martial artist, like an actual hand-to-hand fighter. He's actually a much more skilled fighter, just due to the fact that the Chinese lore has a lot of martial arts put in there. He's also a lot more conniving. Thor has been depicted as a brute, but he's also been depicted as a smart guy. But the Monkey King's known for his intelligence. These two met in a fight. I think Thor would be the aggressor. Sun Wukong would be making fun of him. Sun Wukong would play around with him for a while before ultimately realizing, okay, this guy's actually kind of dangerous. I need to put him down. He'd be strong enough to make him a little concerned, but ultimately not concerned enough to worry about his life. And then using a combination probably of his wits, magic, and his 8-ton staff, which can grow to any size he wants, and he can manipulate it, he would probably put Thor down for the count, at least knocking him out. The fact that Thor has lost two beings that would not necessarily be considered immortals, and again, he didn't lose, he won the fight, but he lost his life in the process. It was a sacrifice play for the World Serpent. So I would probably lean towards Sun Wukong. Keep in mind, I'm not a history buff. I know more on mythology, and my mythology on these guys is a little lacking at the time. So be kind, rewind, but be kind on it. If you do know more, if anyone knows more about them, by all means have your friendly debates in the comments. Just keep it friendly, keep it civil. I don't care if you throw a swear out now and then, but don't start just throwing insults for no reason because you can't make a firm argument. I've seen a lot of people do that, both in my videos and others, and it's just stupid and childish. Anyway, I digress. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks next time.